Chapter 503, The Great Secret. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. With a rumble, a massive red bubble suddenly emerged out of a calm blood pool. With a swoosh, Jiang Yuochen flew out from the broken bubble. Tree Progenitor, who had always kept on the side of the blood pool, was alerted when he saw the movements of the pool. Jiang Yuochen surged out of the blood, surprising Tree Progenitor. Seeing this, Tree Progenitor exclaimed, "Extraterritorial death, you have not been refined into the bloody water by the sacrifice power of the blood pool." Jiang Yuochen fell on the stone table at the edge of the blood pool. He smiled and said, "Sorry, I have disappointed you." Jiang Yuochen then looked over to the entrance of the stone ladder that leads above. He stepped out and walked into the void. He turned into a shadow and rushed to the stone ladder, ready to leave. Extraterritorial death. You can't leave just yet. Tree Progenitor would not let Jiang Yuochen leave. It caught up with Jiang Yuochen by mobilizing the wooden spiritual chi and gathering the powers to its arms. Tree Progenitor's wooden arms were vigorous and powerful. It threw both its palms simultaneously. Before Tree Progenitor's palms even touched Jiang Yuochen, the shockwaves of Tree Progenitor's palms have reached the vest on Jiang Yuochen's back. Jiang Yuochen quickly turned around and gathered the strength of the spiritual power. He pushed both of his palms forward, and in a split second, wisps of heaven and earth spiritual chi converged to the center of his palm, forming streaks of lightning. The streaks of lightning merged and formed two orbs, each half a meter wide. Boom! Two forces collided. The altar shook wildly, causing dust to fall. Struck by the power of the thunderbolt, Tree Progenitor's wooden arms were charred and fumed black smoke. Some parts were even lit up. On the ground and the stone wall, there were thunderbolt snakes hissing. Jiang Yuochen was gone by the time the black smoke disappeared. Damn! Extraterritorial death's power has increased so much in such a short time. Tree Progenitor was grim. It gritted its teeth in hatred and shouted in rage. It stepped on the stone ladder and ran upwards. Tree Progenitor seemed to have suffered the most from the fight, but Jiang Yuochen was not left unscarred either. His arms were injured and unable to move. Tree Progenitor has indeed achieved the fifth change in the fish-dragon realm. Even if it's not good at fighting, it's superior to me in the realm. Jiang Yuochen rushed upward and gathered genuine chi to heal his arms. An intense wave of power came from behind him. Without a doubt, Tree Progenitor had caught up with him. To dodge, Jiang Yuochen used space moving 7 times in a row and finally reached the stone gate at the top of the altar. It was much easier to open the stone gate from the inside of the altar because there was no sacrifice needed to open it. Jiang Yuochen put his palm on a pit of the stone gate and injected genuine chi into it. After a while, the lines of the stone gate lit up. Jiang Yuochen put his palm on the pit of the stone gate and injected genuine chi into it. After a while, the lines of the stone gate lit up. Jiang Yuochen took a step forward and rushed out of the stone gate. Outside the stone gate, there was a loud roar. Extraterritorial death, come out. Hurry up, form the formation to suppress him. Below the altar, 5 kings of Dreamon and 108 millennial Dreamon made a circle. They stood to face different directions, following some mysterious rules. Each Dreamon released ray of light towards the top of Jiang Yuochen's head and covered him with a light screen. Immediately, a strong mountain-like force fell upon Jiang Yuochen. The holy wood array for god destruction was made up of 108 millennial Dreamon, and their strength was comparable to that of 108 cultivators of the fish-dragon realm. It will be difficult for Jiang Yuochen to escape because once you are trapped, even a superior of the 7th change in the fish-dragon realm might not survive. Extraterritorial death, even with all of your skills, you won't be able to escape today, said a king of Dreamon laughingly as he stands at the edge of the holy wood array for god destruction. No one knew, but there was a mosquito-sized black cat on the branch of the king of Dreamon. The black cat stood up and snorted, "How dare a hopeless Dreamon be so arrogant? I'll teach you how to behave." "Who's talking?" the king of Dreamon said harshly. Swoosh! Blackie quickly expanded and became a 33-meter-high behemoth. It waved its sharp claws and instantly severed the king of Dreamon's trunk. Blackie's claws were as sharp as the holy weapon. Blood poured endlessly out from the trunk. After the king of Dreamon fell, the once powerful holy wood array for god destruction fell immediately. the huge array collapsed from the outside to the inside. Zhang Yuochen seized the opportunity and immediately gathered genuine qi to a dragon lock chain on his wrist. This holy weapon is powered by genuine qi to activate inscriptions. The dragon lock chain circled his wrist and turned into an enormous iron rope as thick as a bucket, before flying out like a roaring steely dragon. Swoosh! The dragon lock chain entangled a millennial dreamon's trunk with Zhang Yuochen's arm. Zhang Yuochen swung his arms forcefully and broke out a giant force that directly pulled the millennium dreamon from the ground, throwing it out. A millennial dreamon's root has a depth of at least 10 meters deep, and some are even rooted several hundreds of meters underground. Nevertheless, the dragon lock chain was able to pull it up. That was how powerful the chain was. Zhang Yuochen and Blackie worked together, and they were able to knock out a large number of Dreamon quickly, successfully enlarging the damage on the holy wood array for god destruction. Zhang Yuochen did not want to go on fighting after absorbing the origin qi of the primitive world of wood spirit. He rammed genuine qi with full strength to stimulate meridians of his legs. Boom! His body rushed from the top of the altar like a shell and flew hundreds of meters before landing onto Blackie's back. "Let's go!" Zhang Yuochen exclaimed. With a swoosh, the wings on Blackie's back stretched to about 66 meters. Its wings fluttered, stirring up a forceful wind that blew away all surrounding Dreamon and made the faraway Dreamon waver in the air. The wind also blew off leaves, causing them to fly in the air. "Where should we go?" Tree Progenitor rushed out of the stone gate. When it saw Zhang Yuochen standing on Blackie, its eyes flamed with fury. Then it extended its arms into a 1,000-kilometer-long wooden rod, continually whirling to wrap itself around Blackie's neck. Zhang Yuochen threw the dragon lock chain to intercept the wooden rod. An iron chain and a wooden rod fought in the air like two pythons. Finally, after encountering a series of attacks, Zhang Yuochen and Blackie succeeded in escaping from the siege of the Dreamon tribe. Blackie's speed allowed him to leave the towering altar behind quickly. Even with its skillfulness in speed, Tree Progenitor was still too slow compared to Blackie. "Zhang Yuochen, you were in the altar for such a long time that I thought Tree Progenitor had killed you," Blackie said as it flew. Zhang Yuochen picked up the dragon lock chain and wrapped it around his wrist, turning it into a bracelet. His face was grave when he asked, "How long did I stay inside the altar?" "You've been there for almost 10 days. If you didn't come out today, I would have gone inside to find you." Blackie paused and said, "My research shows that there is something wrong with the altar. It had only existed for less than 600 years, and it was not built by the Dreamon tribe, but by the strength of the human tribe. The inscriptions on the altar are very complex. Only people with the 50th level spiritual power can engrave those inscriptions." Zhang Yuochen was surprised. If a man's spiritual power has reached the 50th level, he should already be sanctified in spiritual power. How can someone like that come to the primitive world of wood spirit to build an altar? Psychic sages' means were even more unpredictable and unpreventable than those used by the martial saints. Each of them had extraordinary supernatural powers and was worshipped and admired by the world's warriors. How did they end up to the inferior primitive world? Blackie continued, "I also discovered that the altar appears to be somewhat related to some remote coordinates in the extraterritorial." Zhang Yuochen was smart enough to understand the situation, even only with a little bit of explanation. His face became grave as if he had discovered a great secret. He said, "You are saying that this altar is just one of them. The other primitive worlds will have the same altars?" Blackie nodded and said, "If an altar is the cornerstone of an array, then the altar inside the Blackwood field is just one of many cornerstones. In the vast void space, there would also be an altar in another primitive world. All the altars connect to form a huge array, which can cover more than half of Kunlun's field." Zhang Yuochen shook his head and said, "It's not just an altar. If my suspicions are correct, the whole primitive world of wood spirit is actually just a cornerstone of the array." "Oh. Did you discover some secrets in the altar?" Blackie asked. Zhang Yuochen said, "The chi of origin of the primitive world of wood spirit is suppressed under the altar. I guess those Dreamon are not even aware of this secret. Once the altar is built, the chi of origin can power the altar. In fact, to draw on the chi of origin was to bring out the spiritual chi of the primitive world of wood spirit. Therefore, Zhang Yuochen is saying that the primitive world of Wood Spirit is just a cornerstone of an array. Blackie laughed and said, a project of this size is uncommon in the history of human tribe. I don't know who is in control of all of this. The man must be more charming than me. It's definitely not easy. Ha ha. Zhang Yuochen snorted and said, no one else can do this, except for the central organization of the imperial court in the First Central Empire. What is Kai Yao doing? Is she going to refine the entire Kunlun's field and primitive worlds? Zhang Yuochen suspected that the reason why the warriors above the Fish Dragon realm were forbidden to enter was to prevent them from discovering the secrets. Even if the warriors of the Heaven realm enter the primitive world of Wood Spirit, they would not be able to reach the depths of Blackwood Field. What's more is that even if they saw the altar, they will not know its purpose. Hearing Zhang Yuochen's words, Blackie laughed and said, it might not be Empress Kai Yao who is behind this. It could be a high-ranking official of the Ministry of War who plotted all of this in the battlefield of Primitive World. Why are you so sure that it's her? Aren't you being biased?